Imagine standing before a god, with your entire eternity hanging from a single feather. No courtroom, no lawyer, no second chance, just your heart and the weight of everything you ever did. And waiting beside the scales was Anubis, the black jackal, guardian of the dead, and Egypt's mysterious judge. But here is the part most people miss. Anubis was not the ruler of the dead. He was the one who decided whether you were worthy to go deeper. And that distinction changes everything. Because Anubis was never simply a god of death, he belonged to something far more frightening, the moment between life and whatever comes after it. To understand Anubis, forget the modern image of a simple god of death. In Egyptian mythology, death was not the end. It was a dangerous passage. The Egyptians imagined that the dead entered a vast supernatural realm known as the Duat, a world beneath and beyond the familiar one, a place of gates, darkness, divine beings, hidden dangers, and judgment. The dead did not simply arrive there and wait. They had to travel. And somewhere inside that darkness stood Anubis. His image was unmistakable, the body of a man, the head of a black jackal, and eyes that seemed to belong to something watching from the edge of the grave. But why a jackal? The answer may be darker than it first appears. Jackals were commonly seen around ancient Egyptian cemeteries. They moved through the desert at night, sometimes appearing near burial grounds. To the living, they were scavengers. But to the Egyptians, their presence could take on another meaning. If jackals were already wandering where the dead were buried, perhaps a jackal-headed god could protect the dead from the very creatures that threatened them. Anubis therefore became a guardian of the cemetery, a protector of tombs, a watcher over the boundary between the living and the dead. And his role went even deeper. Anubis became closely associated with embalming and mummification, because for the Egyptians, preserving the body was not simply about remembering the person who had died. The body was part of the journey. The dead needed to be prepared for what came next. Under the flickering light of oil lamps, embalmers carefully treated the body. The corpse was washed. The organs were removed and preserved. The body was treated with substances designed to slow decay. And then came the linen. Layer after layer. The body disappeared beneath hundreds of carefully arranged strips. But the ritual was not merely practical. It was sacred. The transformation of the corpse was connected to the transformation of the person. And Anubis stood at the center of that boundary. He represented protection during the passage from one state of existence to another. Life, death, and whatever waited beyond. That is why images of Anubis appear so often in funerary contexts. The jackal-headed god was not simply waiting for the dead. He was preparing them, protecting them, guiding them. And once the tomb was sealed, his work was not finished, because eventually every soul reached the same question. What was your life worth? The journey began after death, when the individual entered the realm of the dead. And Anubis could act as guide, protector, and guardian along this terrifying passage. The further the soul traveled, the closer it came to judgment. Imagine entering an enormous chamber after death. There are no kings here, no armies, no wealth, no earthly titles. Everything that once made you important has been stripped away. Gold cannot protect you. Power cannot protect you. Your reputation cannot protect you. And this is what made Egyptian judgment so terrifying. The gods were not interested in how impressive you looked while you were alive. They were interested in what was inside you, literally. Your own heart could testify against you. That fear helps explain the importance of mummification. The body was treated not simply as a corpse, but as something intimately connected to existence beyond death. Anubis became deeply associated with this sacred transformation. The jackal-headed god represented protection at the boundary between worlds. And once those doors closed, Anubis's work was not finished, because eventually the dead reached the most famous moment of the journey, the weighing of the heart. And this is where Anubis becomes something much more than a guardian. He becomes the keeper of a test no human being could escape. At the center of the judgment hall stood a balance. Anubis places the heart on one side. The heart was more than an organ. To the Egyptians, it was deeply connected to a person's identity, memory, character, and moral life. It was the part of you that remained, the part that knew what you had done, the part that could not simply be rewritten after death. Opposite it rests the feather of Maat. A single feather, light, almost impossibly delicate, but it represented something enormous. Maat, truth, justice, balance, order. The principle that kept the universe itself from falling into chaos. And now, everything changes. The heart represents the life you actually lived, not the life you claimed to have lived, not the person you wanted others to believe you were. The truth. The scale begins to move. And suddenly, every action matters. Every lie, every act of cruelty, every betrayal, every moment of compassion, every choice made when nobody was watching. The entire weight of a human life is reduced to one terrifying measurement. Your heart against a feather. If the heart balanced with Maat, the soul could continue toward eternal existence. The judgment was not simply about whether you had been perfect. It was about whether you belonged within the cosmic order represented by Maat. But what if it didn't? What if the heart was too heavy? Waiting nearby was Ammit, the devourer, and she was not a normal monster. Her body combined some of the most feared animals in Egypt: the crocodile, the lion, and the hippopotamus. 3 creatures associated with danger, power, and death. Ammit waited beside the judgment, and if the heart failed, she would consume it. The punishment was not simply dying again. The soul could be denied the eternal existence it had hoped to achieve. No glorious afterlife, no peaceful continuation. The journey would end. And notice something strange. Anubis is not the monster waiting to consume you. He is the one operating the system. He does not roar. He does not threaten. He does not need to. He simply performs the ritual. He places the heart on the scale. He observes the balance, and he allows the truth to speak for itself. That may be one of the most unsettling things about Anubis. He is not the embodiment of death as destruction. He is death as accountability. And this is where Anubis's story takes a fascinating turn. Because if Anubis was so deeply connected to death, why isn't he the great ruler of the Egyptian underworld? Why is that role usually associated with another god? Osiris. The story of Osiris transformed Egyptian ideas about death and resurrection. Osiris became increasingly central to Egyptian funerary religion. He became the great ruler of the dead, the king of the afterlife, the god associated with death, resurrection, and the renewal of life. And as Osiris became more important, Anubis's position changed. The god who had once stood closer to the center of Egyptian death mythology increasingly became the guardian, standing beside the process. The difference is subtle, but important. Osiris ruled, Anubis guided. Osiris represented the destination, Anubis represented the passage. Osiris sat upon the throne, Anubis stood beside the scales. And perhaps that is why Anubis never truly disappeared. Even when Osiris became the dominant figure of the Egyptian afterlife, Anubis remained deeply embedded in funerary imagery, ritual, and the imagination of death. He continued to appear beside the dead, beside the mummy, beside the tomb, beside the scales, always watching, always waiting. And this is where the image of the black jackal becomes even more powerful. Because Anubis exists at the boundary, he is not completely part of the world of the living, but he is not simply a creature of the dead either. He stands between them, at the cemetery, at the tomb, at the moment of embalming, at the moment of judgment, at the threshold of the underworld. Anubis is the god of the transition itself. And perhaps that explains why his image has survived for thousands of years, because death is the one boundary every human being eventually encounters. Every civilization gives it a name. Every culture imagines what waits beyond it. But the Egyptians did something particularly haunting. They imagined that the dead would eventually have to face themselves, not their wealth, not their social status, not their possessions, themselves. And perhaps that is why Anubis still feels strangely familiar. Because the Egyptians imagined a terrifying idea, that beneath every title, every possession, and every excuse, there is still a version of you that cannot lie. Imagine standing there now. The chamber is silent. Anubis stands beside the scale. The heart has been removed from everything you used to hide behind. There is nowhere left to run. No explanation can change the measurement. No one can speak for you. On one side, your heart. On the other, a feather. And the strange thing is, the Egyptians didn't need Anubis to punish you. The scale was enough. Because the real terror was not the god standing beside it. The real terror was discovering what your own heart weighed. So tell me, if Anubis weighed your heart tonight, would it balance with the feather? Or would something hidden inside you make it fall? Perhaps that was the real power of Anubis. He did not need to threaten the dead. He did not need to chase them through the darkness. He did not need to destroy them. He only had to show them what they carried. And maybe that is why, thousands of years later, the image of the jackal-headed god still refuses to disappear. Because Anubis was never simply asking whether you were afraid of death. He was asking something far more uncomfortable. What would happen if death knew the truth about you? This is Obsidian Pantheon. Subscribe and step beyond the god's history left in the shadows.